All right, let's dive into this. The mind-body problem. It's a question that's been around for centuries.
It has, and it's
Mm.
one that still fascinates us, doesn't it? How can something immaterial, like our thoughts and feelings, be connected to something as tangible as our physical body?
It's a real head-scratcher.
Hmm.
We're going to be looking at some philosophical texts and ideas from, the big names like Plato and Descartes.
Yes, those are essential starting points. But we won't stop there. We'll also explore more contemporary thinkers like Merleau-Ponty.
And we can't forget the elephant in the room, artificial intelligence. Can machines think?
That's a huge question looming over us. If our minds are just our brains, could a computer become conscious?
I guess that's where this all leads, right? What does it really mean to say, I think, therefore I am?
Exactly. That famous quote from Descartes sums up the core of the problem. Is our mind a separate entity?
Like a soul trapped in a physical body.
That's one way to think about it, and that's the essence of dualism, the idea that mind and body are distinct.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. Descartes, right? He's the dualism guy.
He is. He argued for a clear distinction between what he called res extensa, the physical body, and res cogitans, the thinking mind.
So for Descartes, the mind could exist even without the body.
That was his belief. He thought this thinking thing, this mind, was immaterial and could exist independently.
And he thought the pineal gland was the connection point.
Yes. Back then, the pineal gland was considered quite unique. It seemed to fit his idea of a single point of interaction.
But how does a non-physical mind actually interact with a physical body? That's always been a stumbling block for me.
It's the Achilles heel of dualism. Even Descartes struggled to explain that mechanism. But the idea of the mind as a separate entity resonates with a lot of people.
Right, like when you're deep in thought or having a vivid dream, it can feel like your mind is somewhere else entirely.
Exactly. But then we have the opposite perspective, monism, particularly materialism.
Materialism. So that means everything is ultimately physical, including the mind.
You got it. Materialism says there's only one kind of stuff in the universe, physical stuff.
So my thoughts, emotions, even my sense of me, it's all just my brain doing its thing.
That's the basic idea. We can even see some of this happening with brain imaging.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But does that mean we've solved the mystery of consciousness just because we can see the brain working? Does that explain what it feels like to experience the world?
There's the rub. It's a question that continues to divide even those who accept a materialist view.
I can see why. It still feels like there's something more to consciousness than just neurons firing.
It's a deep mystery. And it leads us to another fascinating area, artificial intelligence. Could we create a conscious machine if we could replicate the brain's complexity?
Wow, yeah, and that brings up the whole debate about strong AI versus weak AI, right?
Exactly. Strong AI suggests that machines could achieve genuine thought and consciousness.
While weak AI is more about simulating thinking, right? Like a computer that can process information but doesn't really understand it.
That's a good way to put it. And some philosophers, like Marcus Gabriel, argue that computers will never truly think.
Because?
Well, he says they lack something crucial, what he calls the new scoop. It's that human capacity for subjective experience and understanding.
Hmm. So a computer might be able to recognize a face, but it wouldn't really understand what a face is or what it means to be a person.
That's the idea. It's the difference between processing data and actually experiencing the world.
Okay, so we've got dualism, which says mind and body are separate, and materialism, which says everything is ultimately physical. But is there a middle ground here? Is there another way to think about this mind-body connection?
There is, and that's where things get really interesting. Let's step away from the brain for a moment and consider the body.
The body. So we're not just brains in jars, after all.
Not quite. Let me introduce you to phenomenology.
Phenomenology. Okay, I'm intrigued. What's that all about?
Phenomenology focuses on the lived experience of being in the world. It shifts the emphasis from what's happening inside our heads to how our bodies, our senses, and our interactions shape how we perceive reality.
So it's about how we actually experience the world, not just the theoretical stuff.
You got it.
I like it already. Tell me more.
Thinkers like Edmund Husserl and Maurice Merleau-Ponty are key figures in this approach. They emphasize that our bodies aren't just vessels for our minds, but are fundamental to how we understand the world around us.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going, but can you give me a concrete example? How does this embodied consciousness actually work?
Imagine you're walking through a forest. You're not just passively receiving visual information. Your body is actively navigating the terrain. Your senses are taking in the sights, sounds, and smells. And all of this is coming together to create your unique experience of that forest.
I, I see what you mean. It's like my whole body is involved in experiencing the world, not just my brain.
Exactly. And this is what Merleau-Ponty was getting at. He argued that our bodies are not just objects, they're also subjects actively shaping our perception of reality.
Wow. This is making me rethink a lot of things. It's like my mind isn't just trapped inside my head. It's out there in the world, interacting and experiencing things through my body.
And that's just the beginning of our exploration. There's so much more to discover about how this embodied consciousness shapes everything from our relationships to our understanding of ourselves.
Okay, I'm officially hooked. I can't wait to dive deeper into this.
Let's do it. And this idea of embodied consciousness, it has some really fascinating implications, like for how we understand ourselves and our relationships, and even our experience of things like sexuality.
Oh, wow, sexuality. How does phenomenology connect to something as personal as that?
Well, that's where the work of Sarah Ahmed comes in.
Mhm.
She uses a phenomenological approach to explore how our experience of sexuality isn't just about like internal desires, but about how our bodies are positioned and perceived like within social spaces.
So it's not just about who we're attracted to, but about how our sexuality is shaped by the world around us.
Exactly. Ahmed talks about how certain spaces can feel welcoming or hostile depending on your sexual orientation. Like, think about holding hands with your partner in public.
Right.
For a heterosexual couple, this might feel natural, even expected, but for a same-sex couple, that same act can be fraught with anxiety, even danger.
I see what you mean. It's like the world is designed with a certain default sexuality in mind,
Yeah.
and anything that deviates from that norm can feel out of place, even transgressive.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah.
Ahmed argues that these experiences aren't just personal quirks, but they reflect the ways in which heteronormativity shapes our social environments.
Mm.
Certain expressions of sexuality are made more visible, more acceptable, while others are pushed to the margins, made to feel invisible or deviant.
It's like there's an unspoken script for how we're supposed to experience and express our sexuality, and anyone who doesn't follow that script is seen as disrupting the social order.
Precisely. And this can have a profound impact on how people understand and experience their own sexuality. It can make it difficult to embrace and express who you truly are when the world around you seems to be telling you that you don't belong.
This is making me rethink a lot of my assumptions. I'm starting to see how deeply intertwined our minds and bodies are with our social and cultural environments. It's not just about individual experiences, but about how those experiences are shaped by these larger forces at play.
That's one of the key insights of phenomenology. It helps us understand how these seemingly personal aspects of our lives, like sexuality, are actually interconnected with these broader social structures and power dynamics.
It's a lot to process. But this discussion of embodied consciousness, it also makes me think about activities like meditation or yoga, or even dance practices, where the connection between mind and body seems so central.
You're right. These practices, they highlight how we can cultivate a deeper awareness of our bodies and how they interact with the world. They can help us break free from those limiting scripts and tap into a more fluid, embodied sense of self.
I can see how that would be incredibly empowering. But let's circle back to something that's been nagging at me. We've talked about how materialism views the mind as a product of the brain, but what does that mean for free will? If my brain is just a complex machine, do I really have any choice in who I am or what I do?
That's the age-old question. And it's one that even neuroscientists like Dick Swab, a strong proponent of the "we are our brains" perspective, have grappled with.
I remember reading Schwab's book, We Are Our Brains. It was both fascinating and a little unsettling. He argues that our sense of free will is just an illusion, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the world.
Right, Swab believes that our choices, our actions, even our personalities are ultimately determined by the intricate workings of our brains. He even goes so far as to say that we don't die, our brains just cease to function.
That's a pretty stark statement. I can see how this perspective could lead to a sense of fatalism. Like, if everything is predetermined by my brain chemistry, why bother trying to change anything?
It's a valid concern. But even if we accept the idea that our brains play a significant role in shaping our thoughts and actions, there's still room for exploring how our choices, our intentions, and our interactions with the world contribute to our sense of self.
So it's not about denying the influence of our biology,
Yeah.
but about recognizing that we're not just passive puppets of our genes and brain chemistry.
Exactly. Even within a materialist framework, there's space for agency, for the possibility of making conscious choices that shape our lives and our futures. It's about understanding that complex interplay between nature and nurture, between our biological predispositions and the experiences that mold us.
Okay, that makes me feel a little less like a deterministic robot. But this whole conversation is making me think about how much our understanding of the mind-body problem is influenced by the tools we have to study it. We've come a long way from Descartes pondering the pineal gland.
You're absolutely right. The advancements in neuroscience, particularly brain imaging techniques like fMRI, have revolutionized our understanding of the brain and its functions. We can now observe the brain in action, correlating specific areas and neural pathways with thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
It's amazing to think that we can actually see the brain lighting up when someone is experiencing joy, fear, or even love. But does this mean that we've finally cracked the code of consciousness?
That's a great question, and one that continues to spark debate among scientists and philosophers. While brain imaging gives us incredible insights into the physical processes of the brain, it doesn't necessarily tell us what it feels like to experience those processes subjectively.
It's like the difference between observing a symphony orchestra from the audience and actually being a musician in the orchestra, feeling the music vibrate through your body.
That's a brilliant analogy, and it gets to the heart of the challenge of studying consciousness. We can measure brain activity, we can map neural pathways, but we can't fully capture that subjective lived experience of what it means to be a conscious being.
This makes me wonder if the very tools we use to study the brain are also limiting our understanding of consciousness. Are we so focused on the physical mechanisms that we're missing the bigger picture?
It's a valid question, and it's one that some researchers are starting to explore. There's a growing recognition that we need to move beyond these purely reductionist models of the brain and embrace more holistic, interdisciplinary approaches that take into account that complex interplay between our minds, our bodies, and our environments.
It's like we need to zoom out and look at the whole ecosystem of consciousness, not just the individual components, but this whole discussion about the brain as a complex machine also makes me think about the rise of artificial intelligence. If we can replicate the brain's complexity, could we create a conscious machine?
It's a question that's both fascinating and a little daunting, and it takes us back to the debate between strong AI and weak AI.
Right, strong AI being the idea that machines can achieve genuine thought and consciousness, and weak AI being more about simulating thought processes.
Exactly. And while there have been incredible advancements in AI, particularly in areas like machine learning and natural language processing, we're still a long way from creating a machine that could rival the complexity and richness of the human mind.
But some experts believe it's only a matter of time before we reach a point where AI surpasses human intelligence, leading to what's called the singularity.
The singularity is a hypothetical point in time when technological progress accelerates beyond our ability to predict or control, potentially leading to profound and unpredictable changes in human society.
I can see how that would be both exhilarating and terrifying. But even if we don't achieve singularity, the development of increasingly sophisticated AI raises all sorts of ethical questions.
You're absolutely right. We need to carefully consider the potential impact of AI on everything from employment to warfare to the very nature of human identity.
It's like we're venturing into uncharted territory, and we need to proceed with both caution and a sense of wonder. But this whole conversation about AI makes me wonder if our fascination with creating intelligent machines is a reflection of our own desire to understand the mysteries of the human mind.
It's a compelling thought. Perhaps by trying to build a mind from scratch, we're hoping to gain a deeper understanding of our own minds and the nature of consciousness itself.
It's like a technological quest for self-discovery. But this brings us back to the heart of the mind-body problem. If consciousness is more than just brain activity, if it's an emergent property of that complex interplay between our minds, our bodies, and the world around us, then creating a truly conscious machine might be a far more challenging, if not impossible, task.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? And it highlights how much we still have to learn about the intricacies of the mind-body connection.
I'm feeling like the more we explore these questions, the more mysterious they become. But that's what makes them so fascinating, right? The endless quest for understanding who we are and how we fit into this vast and complex universe.
Absolutely. And as we continue to delve into the mind-body problem, it's crucial to remember that this is not just an intellectual exercise. It's a journey of self-discovery, of uncovering those hidden potentials within ourselves and expanding the boundaries of what we thought possible.
It's a reminder that we are more than just our brains, more than just our genes. We are complex, dynamic beings, capable of incredible love, creativity, and connection.
Beautifully said. And it's with that sense of awe and wonder that we continue our exploration of the mind-body connection, recognizing that the journey itself is as valuable as the destination.
Speaking of journeys, I'm feeling like we've been on quite an adventure so far, exploring everything from ancient dualism to cutting-edge neuroscience, from the phenomenology of everyday experience to the mysteries of higher consciousness, and we've only just scratched the surface.
You're right. There's still so much to uncover we haven't even touched on. Fascinating areas like near-death experiences, the role of dreams in understanding consciousness, or the spiritual dimensions of the mind-body connection.
Okay, I'm officially hooked. Let's keep diving deeper.
I knew you'd say that. All right, well, let's talk about dreams. They're definitely connected to this whole mind-body thing.
Dreams, yeah, they're pretty wild, aren't they? Where does all that stuff come from?
Right. It's like a whole other world in our heads. Henri Bergson, a French philosopher, had a really interesting take on dreams.
Bergson, okay. What did he think?
He believed that dreams are part of this continuous flow of our inner lives,
Yeah.
not separate from our waking consciousness, but like part of the same stream. He called it la durée, this subjective experience of time in dreams.
So not just random neural firings, but a different way of experiencing time.
Exactly. And that makes you think about the boundaries of consciousness, right? Like, what if our minds are capable of way more than we usually realize?
It's a trippy thought, for sure. This kind of reminds me of meditation, too. It's about, like, quieting the mind, right?
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. It's about cultivating a state of focused awareness, observing your thoughts and feelings without, getting swept away by them.
So just watching them come and go.
Pretty much. And it's pretty amazing what happens when you do that. There's actually been research on Buddhist monks showing increased gamma wave activity during meditation.
Really? So meditation can actually change your brain activity. That's pretty wild.
It is. And it might even indicate a heightened state of consciousness, which, brings us back to those near-death experiences we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, those are really fascinating.
Yeah.
Like what happens when consciousness is pushed to its limits, right?
Exactly. They often involve these common themes: leaving the body, seeing a bright light, feeling a sense of peace and interconnectedness.
It's like a glimpse into another realm or something.
It really is. And even though these accounts are often, anecdotal, they make us question our ideas about consciousness and the limits of human experience.
This is all pretty mind-blowing. I'm realizing how much we still don't know about consciousness.
We've only just begun to scratch the surface, but that's what makes it so exciting, right?
Totally. And it's not just some abstract concept. It affects everything, how we live our lives, how we interact with each other, how we see the world.
It's at the core of everything. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From ancient philosophy to modern neuroscience, and even touched on things like dreams and near-death experiences.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
Oh,
And I feel like I'm walking away with more questions than answers,
yeah.
but in a good way.
That's the beauty of it. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and who knows what you'll discover about yourself and the universe along the way.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.